I am Marlo Wells, 29 years old, and I work as a senior accountant at a private equity-backed consulting firm in Boston. 3 weeks ago, I got married without my parents in the room, and I swear I still hear my mother's voice in my head saying, "You'll come crawling back when you realize how expensive life is." But life was never what scared me. What scared me was realizing my parents didn't just love my brother more. They planned for it. Because years earlier, my parents threw my brother Hayes the kind of wedding people still talk about at church. 200 guests, a ballroom in a country club, a live band so loud the champagne flutes trembled. They even paid to fly in relatives from multiple states, like we were some kind of political family, not a regular couple from Massachusetts with a paid-off mortgage and a habit of bragging about it. My mother kept repeating the number like it was a trophy. $127,000. She said it with a smile. She said it with pride. She said it like it proved she was a good mother. And I stood there in a dress I didn't pick, holding a bouquet that wasn't mine, watching my brother kiss his bride under a chandelier, thinking, when it's my turn, maybe they'll finally see me. I should have known better. 6 months ago, my fiancé, Beckett, proposed on a rainy Thursday in October. Not a big production. Just us on our tiny balcony, the city blurred into soft lights beyond the glass, his hands shaking a little as he opened a velvet box with a ring that belonged to his grandmother. He looked at me like he'd been holding his breath for 2 years. I said yes, before he could finish the question. I called my parents the next morning, standing in my kitchen with my coffee going cold, my fingers still staring at the new weight on my hand. My mother squealed, actually squealed. I heard her clap, like she'd been waiting for this moment just to tell her friends. My father's voice came in after, cautious and measuring. What does he do? That's always the first question with my father. Not, are you happy? Not, is he good to you? What does he do? Beckett is a corporate attorney, I said. Partner track. There was a pause, a shift, like a door unlatching. Well, my mother said brightly, we'll help you, sweetheart. Of course we will, like we did for Hayes. That night, she emailed me. I saved it. I did not tell myself why I saved it, but something in me tightened when I saw the words. We want to contribute $100,000 toward your wedding. We are so happy for you. Love, Mom. A clean number, a clean promise, a timestamp, proof. For 3 weeks, I let myself breathe. I let myself picture a small ceremony, something elegant and quiet, something that felt like me and Beckett instead of my parents' idea of what a wedding should look like. I even let myself believe that maybe the difference between me and Hayes had been in my head. Then my father invited us to Sunday dinner. Your mother made pot roast, he said like that was a peace offering. Come over, we'll talk details. I should tell you something about my parents' house in Worcester. It always smells faintly like lemon cleaner and old rules. Everything has a place. Every couch pillow sits at the exact same angle, like the house is holding its breath. Even the family photos feel staged. My brother's high school football picture still hangs in the hallway like he hasn't been 33 for years. Beckett wore a button-down and his calm face, the one he uses in courtrooms when someone tries to corner him. He squeezed my hand before we walked in and whispered, I'm here. Whatever happens, I'm here. Dinner started fine. Too fine. My mother asked about venues. My father asked about Beckett's firm. He nodded when Beckett spoke, like he was finally confirming I hadn't embarrassed us. Then, after dessert, my father folded his napkin, cleared his throat, and slid a sheet of paper across the table. He had written it in his neat, tight handwriting. Guidelines. He actually said the word out loud. Guidelines for your wedding. I stared at the paper and felt my stomach tighten because it wasn't a conversation. It was a contract. Rule 1, he said, reading like he was presenting a budget report. All family must be invited. Both sides. That includes cousins, kids, church friends, and anyone your mother already mentioned it to. My mother nodded, as if this was normal. Rule 2, no child-free nonsense. Children are family. Rule 3, no destination wedding. We aren't dragging everyone across the country so you can play vineyard princess. Beckett's knee tensed against mine under the table. His jaw tightened once, then smoothed. Rule 4. Your mother and I have final approval over the guest list. Rule 5. Ceremony at our church. Sent Alara. It's tradition. I blinked at the paper. I could practically hear my own pulse in my ears. Dad, I said carefully, we were thinking something smaller. 80 guests. Maybe a weekend, something intimate. My father didn't blink. Then you can pay for it yourself. There it was, the knife under the tablecloth. I looked at my mother. Her smile was tight. She didn't contradict him. She didn't look surprised. She looked prepared. But you already told me you were contributing, I said, and my voice felt too quiet in that room. My father leaned back. We will if you follow our rules. I remember the exact sound of the fluorescent light buzzing above the dining room table. I remember the way my mother's fork tapped her plate once, impatient. I remember thinking, this is not about love. This is about control. Always has been. Beckett spoke softly, like he was trying not to set off an alarm. Mr. Wells, with respect, we're grateful for any help, but we want this wedding to reflect who we are as a couple. My father's eyes hardened. Reflect who you are, as if family doesn't matter anymore. My mother cut in quickly. Hayes didn't fight us. Hayes understood. It's only fair. That sentence did something to me. Not because it was cruel, because it was a lie. Hayes didn't fight you because you never gave him rules, I said before I could stop myself. Silence hit like a slammed door. My father's voice turned colder. Hayes is my son. He carries the family name. And I felt something in my chest crack, clean and final, like ice giving way. So that's it, I said, keeping my face calm even as my hands shook under the table. Because I'm your daughter, you think I should take what I'm given and be grateful. My father stared at me like I'd said something obscene. Don't twist my words. You don't have to say it out loud for it to be true, I whispered. Beckett's hand covered mine, steady and warm. I looked at him and saw something in his eyes that made my throat burn. Not anger, not pity, certainty. And in that moment, I realized my parents had miscalculated something. They thought this was the part where I panicked, where I begged, where I apologized and agreed just to keep the peace. They didn't understand. I was tired of peace that only existed when I stayed small. Quick real-life pause. When I'm editing these late at night, I get tired, and your comments are what keep me going. Hit like, subscribe, and tell me your city, state, or country. All right, back to the story. I stood up from the table so smoothly my chair didn't even scrape the floor. My mother's eyes widened like she'd forgotten I could do that. Leave. Dad, I said, voice steady, I'm going to pay for my own wedding. My father's mouth opened, like he had a script ready, like he expected me to negotiate. But I kept going. And you can come, I added, but you'll come as guests. No speeches, no special roles, no pretending you bought your way into my marriage. My mother's face flushed. You can't do that to us. I can, I said, because it's my wedding. Beckett rose with me, calm as stone. He nodded once at my parents, polite in the way that makes people feel smaller without raising a voice. Thank you for dinner. On the drive back to Boston, rain streaked the windshield and the city lights blurred into gold. I stared out at the wet streets and tried to breathe through the ache that kept rising in my throat. Beckett didn't talk. He let me have silence, which might be the kindest thing anyone has ever done for me. When we got home, I sat on the edge of our couch and pulled up my mother's email. The promise, the number, the timestamp. I stared at it until my eyes burned. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Hayes. Can we talk? There's something you should know. Mom and Dad aren't being honest about that wedding money. My thumb hovered over the screen as my stomach dropped, because I suddenly understood why my parents had written rules instead of writing a check. And I had the sick feeling that whatever Hayes was about to tell me would make everything I already knew feel even worse. I stared at Hayes's text until the screen dimmed. My finger hovered over the call button, and for a second I hated myself for still wanting him. Still wanting my big brother to be the bridge, even after years of watching him get everything while I learned to clap politely from the corner. Beckett set 2 glasses of water on the coffee table and sat beside me without asking. He saw the name on my phone and didn't comment. He just waited. I called Hayes. He answered on the second ring, breathless, like he'd been packing. "Marlo, okay, listen. I'm not supposed to be telling you this." My mouth went dry. "Then why are you?" "Because I can't pretend anymore," he said, and there was a roughness in his voice I'd never heard. Like guilt finally had teeth. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. Beckett shifted closer, his hand warm against my back. "Hayes," I said slowly, "what do you know?" He exhaled hard. "Mom and Dad, they had a fund." "A fund," I repeated, and it sounded almost stupid out loud. Like something from a movie, like a plot device. But my stomach already knew. "Yeah," he said, "Dad set it up when I was born. It was supposed to be for my future. College, down payment, wedding. He called it an investment in the family name. It grew over time. Mom talked about it like it was a trophy." I swallowed, and for me. Silence. "Hayes," my voice tightened. "Was there one for me?" He didn't answer right away. I heard something in the background, the low rumble of a TV, a muffled laugh from his wife in another room, normal life happening while mine cracked open. "I don't know," he said finally, too fast. "I don't know if it was separate or the same or how they structured it. But I do know this. When I got engaged, Mom told Brittany and me not to worry about costs. She said, 'We've been saving for this since Hayes was a baby.'" "Since you were a baby," I repeated, and my throat burned. "Marlo," he rushed, "I'm not trying to hurt you." "But you are," I whispered, because the truth always hurts first. He went quiet. Then he said, "I saw something last year when Dad asked me to sign some paperwork. It was just tax stuff," he said, "and I didn't care. But I remember the number. It was around 150,000 at one point. Maybe more. I wasn't paying attention. I should have been. 150,000. The number landed in my body like a weight. I pictured my parents' dining room table, the fluorescent light, my father's neat handwriting on a sheet titled Guidelines, like he was managing a product launch and I was the employee who needed to be corrected. And I realized the rules weren't tradition. They were leverage. "So they had money," I said, voice flat. "They just didn't want to give me any unless they could control me." Hayes didn't deny it. My hands started shaking so hard, I set the phone down on speaker and pressed my palms to my thighs, trying to hold myself together like I could physically stop the humiliation from spreading. Beckett's jaw tightened. His voice was calm, but I could hear the edge. "Hayes, did they pay for your wedding entirely from that fund?" Hayes hesitated. I don't know. I assumed it was their savings. I didn't ask. They were proud. Dad kept saying this is what a man does for his son. Mom kept repeating the number like she wanted everyone to bow. I stared at the wall, at our framed photo from Boston Common, Beckett and me laughing under golden leaves. I felt stupid for ever thinking my parents would suddenly be fair, because I had the right ring and the right fiancé. "So what do you want me to do with this?" I asked Hayes, and my voice finally cracked. "I don't know," he said quietly. Marlo, they're going to make you look like the villain. They're already doing it. Mom called Brittany crying tonight. She said you humiliated them, that you're being brainwashed by Beckett and his fancy law crowd." I almost laughed, but it came out as a sound like pain. Brainwashed, because I said no. Hayes's voice got smaller. "Brittany asked me why they could spend 127 on us but won't just help you. I didn't have an answer. And then Mom said something. She said, we can't let Marlo start thinking she can set terms. If we give her money without conditions, she'll never listen again." I went still. Beckett's hand froze on my back. "Say that again," I whispered. He repeated it, word for word, and I felt something turn cold and solid inside me. They weren't scared of my wedding. They were scared of me learning I could say no. I ended the call with Hayes gently, because he sounded broken in a way I didn't know how to fix. When the screen went dark, the room felt too quiet, like the world had paused to see what I'd do with this new truth. Beckett spoke first. "We need to protect you." From what, I asked, though I already knew. From them rewriting the story, he said. From them turning your whole family against you. And from them trying to use money you never needed to make you feel like you did. I nodded slowly. My mind was already moving. Numbers, timestamps, proof. I'd been raised in a house where feelings were treated like inconvenience, but documentation mattered. I still had my mother's email promising 100,000. I had my father's written guidelines. I had his voice on the phone saying, "Follow my rules or pay for it yourself." And now I had Hayes's confession, the number he remembered. 150,000. A fund, a plan. I opened my laptop, hands still trembling, and started a folder. Not dramatic, not vindictive, just careful. Beckett watched me, his voice softened. "Marlo, what are you thinking?" I stared at the blinking cursor in a new document and felt my heart beating like a warning. "I'm thinking," I said, "that if they want a story where I'm the villain, they're going to need to work harder. Because I have receipts." The next morning, my phone started buzzing before I'd even finished my coffee. One voicemail from my aunt. 2 missed calls from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in years. A text from a church friend of my mother that said, "Your parents are devastated, call them." I sat at my kitchen counter, looking at the messages stack up like accusations. Beckett came up behind me and kissed the top of my head. "You don't have to answer any of that." But I did. Not because I owed them. Because I wanted to see how far my parents would take it. I returned one call, my aunt's. She answered immediately, breath sharp. "Marlo, what is going on? Your mother says you're cutting the family out, that you're refusing to invite children, that you're making them beg to come to their own daughter's wedding." "Beg," I repeated softly, and I felt my anger rise, slow and controlled. "Who told you that?" "Your mother," my aunt said, defensive. "She's heartbroken." I closed my eyes. The story was already being written, and I wasn't holding the pen. Not yet. I didn't correct my aunt. Not yet. I thanked her for calling, told her I loved her, and ended the conversation with my hands steady even though my chest felt tight. When I set the phone down, Beckett was watching me like he already knew what choice I was about to make. "They're controlling the narrative," he said quietly. I nodded, and if I rushed to defend myself, I looked guilty. "So what's your plan?" I looked out the window at the Boston skyline, gray and sharp against the morning sky. "My plan is to let them talk, and then I'm going to tell the truth. Not emotionally, not angrily, just clearly." That afternoon, my mother showed up at my office. She didn't call first. She never does when she wants to make a scene. I was in a meeting when my assistant knocked on the glass wall, her eyes wide. "There's a woman here who says she's your mother. She's crying." Of course she was. I excused myself and walked to the lobby. My mother stood by the reception desk, mascara smudged, tissues clutched like props. 2 of my coworkers hovered nearby pretending to scroll their phones. "Marlo," she sobbed when she saw me. "How could you do this to us?" I felt something settle in me then. Not anger, clarity. "We're not doing this here," I said calmly. "Let's talk in the conference room." Once the door closed, her tears stopped instantly, like a switch flipped. "You've embarrassed us," she snapped. "People are calling, asking questions. Why would you tell Hayes lies about some fund?" "I didn't tell him anything, Mom. He told me." Her face drained of color. "You don't understand," she said quickly. "That money was ours. We decided how to use it." "You decided to use it all on Hayes," I said. "And then you promised me 100,000 you never intended to give unless I obeyed you." Her mouth opened, closed. "You should be grateful we offered anything." That sentence ended something inside me. I pulled my phone out and placed it on the table between us. I opened her email, the promise, the timestamp. "You offered it freely," I said. "Then you took it back when I wouldn't let you run my wedding. And now you're telling people I cut you out." She leaned forward, eyes sharp. "If you don't fix this, we won't come." I met her gaze, "Then don't." The words were calm, final. She stared at me like she didn't recognize me anymore. "You'll regret this," she said. "On your wedding day, when everyone sees what kind of daughter you are." I smiled, small and sad. I already know who I am. She left without another word. The wedding went on as planned. 85 guests, a vineyard in Northern California, soft light, long tables, laughter that didn't feel forced. Beckett stood waiting for me at the end of the aisle, his eyes steady, his hands open. My parents' seats were empty. I noticed, then I stopped noticing. During the reception, one of my mother's old friends, a retired accountant named Carol, pulled me aside. She looked uncomfortable, like she was holding something heavy. "I need to tell you something," she said softly. "Your mother used to talk about money, about plans. Years ago, she told me they had $150,000 saved for both kids' weddings, split evenly." I closed my eyes. "I thought you knew," Carol said. "I didn't realize until today." I thanked her. I hugged her. And I went back to the dance floor where my husband was laughing with people who loved us without conditions. The truth spread quietly, not through me, through whispers, through questions, through relatives connecting dots my parents never thought would be seen. By the time Beckett and I returned from our honeymoon, the silence had settled. No calls from my parents, no apologies, just a single text from my mother. "You chose this." I read it once, then I deleted it. Weeks later, I sat in our apartment, watching the city lights blink on one by one. Beckett wrapped his arms around me from behind. "Do you miss them?" he asked gently. "Sometimes," I said honestly, "but I don't miss who I had to be around them." I finally understood something that night. My parents didn't lose me because of a wedding. They lost me because they believed love was leverage and obedience was affection. I didn't expose them. I didn't shame them publicly. I just stepped aside and let the truth surface on its own. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't begging to be chosen. I already had been.